Good morning and welcome to the ATALAYA Mining PLC annual results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and they can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I would like to submit the following poll, and I would now like to hand you over to CEO Alberto Lavandeira. Good morning to you.
Many thanks. Hello, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Again, I have with me the CFO, Cesar Sanchez, and Mike Steiner, Head of Corporate Development. And if needed, they will also be available to help respond some questions. I'm going to go through the presentation of our results, which will include the main results of the last quarter of 2023 and the first quarter of and the full year. And I will also give a little bit of highlight of how things are going and the forecast for 2024. 23 was an excellent year, I would say. It was a positive year with, let's say, recovering back to more or less normal conditions from the operating cost point of view. We produced 99% of what we produced the previous year, and we did so even with slightly lower grades that we had in the last quarter, which were planned to be there according to the mine plan before we start getting the recoveries of these grades up. But we processed 15.8 million tons with good recoveries of 86.6. So we achieved a cash cost of slightly less than 280 and all-in cost of 309. This is consistent with the guidance. And I would have to say that these are quite remarkable good costs when you consider the type of grades we were able to maintain the unit costs per ton well under control. This is basically due to the lower electricity prices, and of course we had these lower electricity prices have an effect in other things like bolts and the price of lime and price of reagents, so the whole thing flows down. In the other hand, we had some higher costs, cost in the mining, not because our unit costs were higher, simply we had to move a little bit more tons that later we will not have to move, simply because we needed to move tons from the existing Cerro Colorado pit so that we could move our key equipment. The contractor could move the key equipment into the stripping of San Dionisio, which has already started. San Dionisio, just to remind you, is an area with much higher grade. Well, with all these operating parameters that went reasonably well, we had an EBITDA of 73 million euros, which is higher, almost 20 million higher than the previous year, mainly due to lower operating costs. Cash flows were also higher, and we invested this extra cash flows produced from operating activities in a prudent way so that we could maintain our net cash position under control, and we invested that in building the helix and also building the solar plant, which were 18 million euros in one and 13 million euros in other, so basically around 30 million euros. So with all this, considering that things are going as expected and that the operating costs are under control, the board decided, and we had a good financial position, the board decided to give a final dividend of 0.04, which basically tops a little bit what we had already. So it's around 20% higher than the previous year. But that was not only that. I mean, we had lots of other things going on. We continue with our plans to move away from AIM into the main market, and this is all the papers are going. We had slight delay due to the when our last attempt was pretty close to Christmas and year end. But finally, this thing seems that it's going to be happening in the first weeks of April, so only 1 month from now. We also proposed the domiciliation from Cyprus to Spain, which was basically will allow us to be included in the indexes. And since we didn't have any liquidity in Toronto, we decided to cut costs there and to remove the listing in Toronto. So right now we're basically will be listed in the main market starting in April. At the board, we continue to reinforce the board. Neil Gregson was appointed a director, but also, the lead director. But we also continue to reinforce the board, basically to fulfill the conditions set by the new main market listing. And we will be strengthening the board in the next months with new independent directors. Although our board right now is basically formed by independent professionals. From the assets point of view, we saw the first copper cathodes coming out from Helix, although these were only a small amount during the startup of the commissioning of this plant. And the plant continues to be under construction. Right now they're leaching with zinc. We also started moving the waste in San Dionisio in order to get to the ore as soon as possible. And also mining equipment has been ordered and is about to arrive to be able to get this additional waste movement. And from the permitting point of view, we continue advancing in Touro. We got a permit to extend the mine life of Rio Tinto, including a huge tailings expansion, which will give us space for the extra tonnage mine at San Dionisio. And we also got the mining permit for Masa Valverde, which means we will likely start at the end of the year a ramp to access the higher grade that's closer to surface. From the sustainability side, we continue to set strong targets. We advanced the construction of our solar plant, there is some delays there, but it's going to be up and running in the second quarter of this year. And of course, we continue with the water treatment plants at Touro, which are key to get the permits. And of course, we publish a new sustainability report, and the next one is going to be coming out soon. We already seen the drafts, and it really looks very professional and very nice. So going to the details of those, most of it has been already explained, but I think the graph explains very well what happens. You see in the graphs in the right side, you will see that we passed more tons, almost a record. Remember, this plant was supposed to be treating 15 million tons, and we have been able to treat 16 million tons equivalent. So the plant is running well. The recoveries in the last quarter were slightly lower due to the lower grade, and production was similar to previous quarters. But since we had some good production in the second quarter, the overall for the year has been quite constant, and you see that the revenues are similar to the previous year. So basically, although the copper price was slightly lower, production was slightly lower, the revenues were basically the same. EBITDA was slightly lower in the last quarter, but overall in the year, you will see later that it has been better than the previous year. And the net cash position stayed very similar to our previous levels, even having invested around 15 million in this quarter, and our profits, as I said before, were similar to previous year, even with this low quarter. Coming back to the whole year, revenues were slightly lower due to lower copper prices and slightly lower production. But since we had much lower operating costs, we had a better EBITDA and better profits and much better cash flow, and it allowed us to to continue investing in the operations and in the future. And we still kept a very good cash position at the end of the year with around 120 million euros and a net cash position without any net debt of 54. Working capital has gone down a little bit, but that's simply due to our short-term debt. It's a mixture of short-term and medium-term debt. Medium-term meaning 3 years, and depending on the maturity of that debt, which normally we can roll because they are revolving facilities. It doesn't mean too much, but it shows that our financial position in the last 3 years, in spite of this high cost structure, have been maintained quite well while we continue to invest. And this is fully disclosed in slide 10, where we show the costs in a quarter and the cost for the full year. Second column from the right, you will see the year 23, what we are discussing compared to 22. The main difference, as you can see, is much lower cost from processing. That's mainly due to electricity, but also due to lower line costs, lower steel balls, lower things. Other things like mining is slightly higher due to as I said before, we were moving more material in order to get to the better grades of San Dionisio, and overall lower site costs. The rest of the things like freight and offsite are quite similar to previous years, slightly lower, but we expect to see much better costs in this next year. We will go later with the guidance, and there are reasons for that. The treatment charges are falling down, freight it's flat or going down, and we also expect to see lower inflation in other parts. Corporate costs and the rest of things are very similar. The main question here is much higher in capitalized stripping, and this is due to the starting the activities in San Dionisio. This is as expected. As you remember, there was a plan to mine San Dionisio and Cerro Colorado simultaneously, and the first movement of material was going to happen in 24. We accelerated that a little bit because we wanted to see if we can compensate the slightly lower grades that were predicted in this year as soon as possible with the higher grades that are going to be found at the San Dionisio pit. Overall, there's an important reduction in all-in sustaining costs. I should probably remind here that within our capitalized stripping and within our mining costs, we have the cost of the contractor includes the purchasing of equipment, the replacement of the mining fleet. And this is very relevant since, for example, just to get to the San Dionisio area, the contractor has already ordered and they are arriving 5 new trucks with much larger size, a 50% larger capacity, and a excavator that's double the size, simply to expand. And this is totally out of our cost. So within the cost of excavation, those costs are included, and you don't have to account in addition to that for the purchase of a new mining fleet. Most of these good results, as I said before, are due to the lower cost of energy. You can see that 2023 has been much lower than the horrible year of 22. But I think the important point here is also to show that 24 has already started in a very good mode. We have had around 2 months where the prices have been around 50, so well within the prices in the long term. And remember, as a reminder, that we have covered around 30% of our production for the future at those prices around the 50s. Plus, the solar plant will provide price at much lower, so our future cost will be similar to what we had in the days 2021 or even 19. So that's a big part of the equation that gave rise to much higher costs during 22 I believe are gone. Just to compare with peers into the industry, and we always do that not to show ourselves versus others, simply to show that due to the way of reporting that some people do not include in the C1 costs the the mining cost, the capital required to replace the fleet in the mining costs, our C1 costs are normally higher than average, but later the difference between C1 and all-in costs are much lower, which means you can see there that in spite that the big increase in the left side of the columns, the big increase in cost that we saw in 22 due to the electricity prices, since then we have been able to control the costs and to keep them well within the industry average, which I think is relevant, because at the end what matters is not the C1, it's the all-in cost. You always need to replace fleet and you always need to do ongoing work in your mines. So with that, how is 24 looking? Well, we expect to produce more or less the same ore. We expect to process around the same thing, 15.5 to 15, maybe a little bit higher million tons through the plant. The copper grade, it's going to be slightly lower in the first part of the year, but higher in the second part when we access the higher grades of San Dionisio. And recovery rate, we also expect it to be around 85%. With all these parameters, you should expect a transitional year, a year that will have around 52,000 tons of copper, similar to the previous year, with cash cost, I would say, very, very similar to what we had this year. With that, of course, depends on the copper price, which so far it seems to have started in a good way. Our EBITDA should be equal or higher than previous years, and the extra cash flow, where we will use it? Well, we'll use it to finalize the solar plant and E-LIX, not because there are new investments, simply there are investments coming from previous year that are rolled to this year. But the main thing is to move the road and relocate the electric line and so on at San Dionisio, which takes most of the investment. Part of it could probably be going into 25, but most of it is going to be done in 24, because we need to get to the better grades sooner rather than later to benefit from the higher grades and to be able to get lower costs. So in addition to that, within our normal investments, we continue spending around 5 to 7 million into exploration, probably a bit higher this year. And of course, this can change. If we have a discovery, we'll devote more money for that. So for those of you that are not familiar why we are pushing so hard in San Dionisio, is because the resource grade is basically double than what we have. In the picture that you have in the center, you will see the pit of Cerro Colorado, which is the one we are mining right now. There you see two things. You see in the far right, you see we are advancing with a pushback. You see that there's a new area there that needs to be taken down in order to access areas of the north in the south. Sorry, in the east and the south. But at the same time, you will see in the first part of the picture that the machines have already started pushing in San Dionisio. And this picture actually is slightly old because it's already advancing very well. Things that you can see in the picture that I'm showing now in slide 16 is several things. In the far end, you see a whole gray area. That's the solar plant that you can see is basically covered already with panels. And in the bottom left corner, you see the E-LIX plant. In blue is the thickener of the tailings. E-LIX is important because normal differential flotation applied to polymetallic sulfides in the parent belt will give you recoveries of 60-70% of copper, 70-75% of zinc. This is basically based on historic reporting and also in our own test work. By applying E-LIX, the combination of flotation and E-LIX itself goes up to 80 or 85% in copper zinc. This is a huge difference, and we are seeing that's why we are so keen in getting this up and running and to prove the concept in order to apply it for in the longer term. And it's going well. We started the year. The plant, as you can see on the right side, is not a small plant. It's a complex plant with lots of pipes, lots of tanks, electrolytic cells, and leaching system. It's a quite novel system, which I cannot give too much details. And in January 24, when they were leaching some copper concentrates, they got very clean solution, enough to produce very clean copper cathodes, totally commercial, grade A, 99.995 copper content, without the use of Essex, which is absolutely incredible and intriguing. Right now, they are working with conditions to remove zinc, and I can report verbally that the results are coming very well. But of course, any startup, and especially when it's a startup of something that's totally new, needs time, and they still need some time to finalize this. And I don't expect this to start running smoothly until mid-year, because it's logical. They need it works when it works, but then suddenly a valve breaks or a pipe is leaking, and they have to repair it, and the things go smoothly. In addition to that, they started with a small team, but right now they are engaging people and they are training people locally normally, and they will be continuing to recruit people during this next few months. The solar plant had some delays, and this picture is in February. Now it's much more advanced. A few days ago, you can see some small holes in the middle. There were some delays when including the supports because of rejects in the pulling tests, and but the plant is very advanced, and the main connection to the electric line, to the high voltage line, has already been completed. We had to stop during a few days in this quarter, and the substation is in the far end, so we will not need to stop to make the connection to the solar plant. A little bit of delay in this plant, which is disappointing, but on the other hand, as I said before, we had very low electricity prices during the first quarter, and it's going to be also low in the second quarter. So we took advantage of these good prices and have locked in prices for basically most of the second quarter. So any delay on the startup of this plant will not affect our costs. To the contrary, will be very similar or lower than previous years. But we will hope to get this thing going during the second quarter. And total is not much to say. It's not much to say, but there is important thing to say, is that we had elections. There were elections in February, in the regional elections, and we don't mention too much, obviously, in the press release, because this is something that in theory does not affect us. But when I mean in theory, the reality is that obviously there was a certain uncertainty of the results of the elections, which were won by the Conservative Party with full majority, not because any specific party has more or less support, simply because obviously this continuity is very good to be able to process our papers. We have applied for our project to be included in a strategic project, project of strategic interest, which is a new law that came into stream in 1st of January. And we believe this is going to be included and approved, and as soon as the new government is in place, which is expected to happen sometime late March or early April, we believe that our request will be accepted. This means that the permitting lines are shortened, and there's a much higher confidence that this thing will see the light sometime later this year. An important point is, as I said before, is that we will be starting to be trading in the main market sometime in April, and later we'll also be trying to get into the into the indexes a little bit later. So overall, an exciting 24, where we have lots of targets. Helix, to confirm that the solar plant will reduce our costs, and Initio will as soon as we get try to get to the high rates as soon as possible. The permitting process, hopefully we get this as a strategic nomination, which means it will be a further improvement. Right now, the situation with the stakeholders is excellent, with very good relations with everybody, and we will continue exploring and of course passing to the main market, as I said before. So our future is very clear. We have said we don't want to be a single asset, so we want to have the total as soon as possible. We continue to look at other things, and I think that in less than 3 years, I see our company getting to the 120,000 tons of copper equivalent level, which means copper in the copper on the zinc coming from the other areas of polymetallic, which is basically doubling our copper production, the same thing that we did that we doubled in the first years of this company. So an exciting future, and since we are one of the few pure copper plays in the copper market, I think there will be a strong interest in these years that we are seeing an important change in the copper market perception. As you probably all know, we have been going back to the $4 per pound levels, with the difficulties in production from mines, with the waking up after the lunar period, the New Year period in China. The supply side is a little bit stressed, let's say, with Codelco facing problems, with Cobre Panama shut down, with Anglo American and Quebrada Blanca delays. So I think the time from the supply side is bright. From the demand, we continue to see the steady demand, especially from renewables, and new energy transition is going all over the world. In India, it's picking up. So there's lots of good news expecting to come from the copper price, we expect. And I would say that this concludes my presentation. Probably longer than expected, but fine.
Perfect. Alberto, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right corner of your screen. While the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Alberto, Cesar, as you can see, we have received a number of questions throughout today's presentation. And Alberto, if I may just hand back to you and kindly ask you to read out the questions, give responses where appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to be reading there's lots of presentation questions here. I know that 23 PA are routine to include mining ore from San Dionisio in 24, where you are currently waste stripping. So does the current 24 guidance 51, 53 include ore processed from San Dionisio? And if so, how much? In other words, is final permit of San Dionisio with its high rate of risk of potential upside for 2000 guidance? Thanks. Well, there is most of the excavation is going to be waste, but yes, we will be mining through some areas of better grades, which will be processed. So there is a small amount, not much. I would say roughly, I don't have the numbers in my head, I would say that from the 15 million tons processed, I would say around 10% will be coming from San Dionisio at higher grade. And the permitting, in theory, we should not affect us because we have a permit to make this first interim pushback. I mean, only if the final permitting of the full perimeter of the San Dionisio was delayed beyond, I would say, first, second quarter of next year, we'll probably start impacting the access to this grade. Doesn't mean it will impact the production because we will be mining from Cerro Colorado, but obviously the delay, it will mean a delay of better grades and improvement in copper production. Could you provide an update on commissioning and ramp up the Helix? plant which is due this half. In terms of economics, from what you are currently seeing, does production of zinc make sense at current spot prices, or you would prefer to look at producing copper? It's a very good question, actually, this last part, because we could produce copper and we produce zinc. But right now, our plans, and very likely this is the way we will start, and is we will be taking away the zinc from the copper concentrates, but removing the zinc, but keeping the copper. So we will stay producing copper normally, but we will remove the zinc as contained in this copper concentrates. We have some areas that are available to be mined almost immediately that have higher zinc, which are not in our reserves, but also contain higher copper within the Cerro Colorado pit, and that's where we will start. In the term of economics, it will not make a huge difference because this year is a year of ramp up, and we are only looking at the plant capacity of 10 to 15,000 tons of zinc. So, and this is starting in June, ramping up slowly. So I don't think economic will make sense. I think it will make a huge difference. I think the upside will come from the application of in other parts of the belt and application of specifically in the lower parts of San Dionisio. How is it going to start? Well, right now, as I said before, they are already contracting some people. They already have one full shift working, not 3 shifts working from Monday to Friday, but they stop during the weekend. The idea is to train all these people until during the next couple of months. This is not a new technology, absolutely new. And of course, I expect things to happen, some issues to happen, but the idea is to start ramping up until during the second quarter, and then start slowly going up, bringing more capacity. More capacity will come from better availability and stopping the small hiccups that they have with filters and pipes, things that are not related to the leaching itself. The next question is share buyback. Are we any closer to this being started? No, we have not decided to do anything with this. I mean, there are some question marks about if we will reduce the liquidity. I think we will wait and see what happens with the liquidity once we get into the index. Once we get into the index and once we get into the main listing, I think this will probably change the liquidity, and then maybe this will be possible. Atalaya does not seem to be included in any ESG rankings for the mining sector. What is being done to improve this visibility? Well, we are providing now with all the data to sending it to the providers of these rankings. So hopefully this will come into place this year. Also, we are publishing the 23 report, and I think we will be ranked very well because actually we are doing things, I would say, much higher level than others.
Alberto, if I may ask, but
Yes.
just to be a little more specific, so we have engaged with the major sustainability rating companies such as Sustainalytics, MSCI, and ISS, and we have done a lot of initiatives, and they are aware about the initiatives that we take in, which is a very broad things that we have done, things going through the implementation of CBDs, reporting the climate change, getting to some target in the medium terms, and all this is being considered. So I'm expecting that these sustainability rating agencies to start considering this very soon.
Thank you, Cesar. Another question in this line is, what other green measures, not including energy generation, is Atalaya implementing or has implemented? For example, electric furnaces, biodiesel, hydrogen. Well, look, so far, hydrogen is not yet economic or even feasible for trucks. Biodiesel could be used, but there's no availability in the area where we are. Electric furnaces, they are not applicable. But there are several things that we are doing. One is a much reduced level of water, which are not specifically energy, but they also count for ESG. We are recycling 85% of the water. We only get water from new areas, from dams, specifically to avoid what we lose from evaporation. We use absolutely all the water that of the rains on top of the pit after cleaning it. But the main big change will come with the success in application of Helix. Helix is a leaching system that basically treats the copper concentrates with electricity. And of electricity that can be solar, can be wind. Spain has a huge generation of wind and solar. And this will avoid, first of all, the transport of concentrates. And second, they produce cathodes directly instead of burning them in furnaces. So this is a huge change. I think we could probably change the way things are done in some areas. It will never compete with a smelter, because a smelter, besides being ESG friendly or not, they're very, very efficient because they sell the sulfuric acid, which is needed, by the way, for agriculture, for fertilizers. So they sell the slag. They're very efficient. But I think Helix is one of the big contributions, as well as water control. Can the dividend just indicated be paid as an interim dividend before the AGM and redomiciliation to avoid withholding issues? Cesar, can you respond to there are some issues with this?
Yes, I think it might be a little bit difficult as the year is now completed and behind us. I mean, the board of directors proposed to pay a final dividend for the year, and there might be some legal issues around paying an interim dividend on a year that is completed. I think the process is continues to be that the final dividend must be approved by the shareholders, and we're expecting that will happen once the company is already paying. So I'm happy to have a look at this, but I think we will have limited options here.
A startup of solar. Next question is: startup of solar plant is later for Q2. As is near term, can you be more precise, please? I think May is when we expect to have the connection of the grid of most of the plant, which is a good timing also for solar plant. I mean, that's the latest estimate. So the delays were coming from some supply issues, delays with the provider of some materials for the substation of Endesa, of the main company, not ours, and also, as I said before, with the supports of the panels that in some places they did not pass the quality test of what they call the pull test. Basically, it's a way to check that the panels are not going to be flying out if there's a huge wind coming. And this is means that you have to reinforce them by putting some cement and so on. So this took time, but it's already finished. So our latest estimate is made and should be up and running. Another one is Atalaya a member of International Copper Association? No, we are not. They produce a comprehensive report in 23 called The Pathway to Net Zero. There seems to be no mention of Atalaya in this report. Don't you think ESG profile would be higher considering what you have implemented so far? The first question, yeah, we will see. We'll see if how we can become a member. Really, we have not thought on that. And the second thing, I think the profile is going to be increased, as Tasha said, when they receive it. When we have already been engaging with these rating agencies, because the way we are doing things, I think it should be much higher. Next question is: will you provide color on the strategic projects capex? There are still no details on the sustaining capex. Could you provide more detail on the sustaining capex for 24? How much stripping in Atalaya planning to capitalize in 24 for San Luis and Terra Colorado? Well, I think yes. I think we have provided the guidance. I think the typical way of how to capitalize is basically the excess of a stripping that you do in a year over and on top of what's the average of the reserves is what you capitalize, simply for accounting rules. It does not affect the overall all-in sustaining costs that we always report. During 24, as I said before, most of the work in San Dionisio is capitalized. I would say all, because basically it's removing, stripping, access, moving the road, moving the electric lines. And in strategic projects, we have just said what we have. It's basically San Dionisio preparation, and finalize what has been going during this year.
Alberto, if I be a little bit more specific on the sustaining capex for 2024. So historically we've been spending around 8 million, 6 to 8 million, closer to 8 million. This year, as we're investing on the pre-stripping of San Dionisio, the plan is to spend around 6 million on sustaining capex.
Next question is, thanks you, Cesar. It seems that E-LIX is showing promising results. When does ATALAYA expect to provide more details about E-LIX performance forecast? I would say as soon as we have them, mid-year. I think we will probably announce the production of zinc material as soon as they start commissioning, and I would say mid-year. Yeah, when we see that the things can go more or less steady, I think we will give some guidance of what we. But so far, the results from the recovery point of view, which is the difficult part, are okay. What shows some looking to show some hiccups is in basically typical things of commissioning, like water valves, filters, clogging until they fine tune, which is quite normal with commissioning of plants. The next question is, ATALAYA's energy generation, can you give more details of any plans, if any, to expand this energy production? Well, we had a study and we had a measuring tower to produce wind, 18 megawatts, but we received the results and it was barely economic. So for self-generation. So when you see that there's a huge wind generation happening in Spain and solar, with the future prices being around 40 euros per megawatt hour, it's very difficult to be competing with this. Although the energy generation will not be ours, but it will be generated by wind and solar because Spain is growing big time. And the next question actually mixed with this is going forward, what will be mixed with wind and solar in 5-10 years? Look, then Spain, I mean, we get besides the 22% we will get from our solar, that's ours. The rest of, let's say 80% to simplify, the rest will come from the grid. The Spanish grid, normally it's around 80 to 85% is non-related to CO2. Around 20% is nuclear, and the rest is hydraulic, wind, and solar. With the wind growing big time, and solar also, but solar, as you know, is intermittent. So I think that will be the profile in the future. Will be probably growing to 90% in general. That will be wind and solar and hydraulic, and that's 90% of the 80% that we don't consume. So I would say probably our copper and our production will be one of the better from this CO2 point of view, because it will be basically 90% of the 80 plus, so over 95% or 92% related to wind, solar, and hydro. Continue with energy generation. Will these assets be incorporated into a separate company owned by ATALAYA? Advantages of raising debt from this separate unit. If it reaches a critical size, could it be IPO'd? Could it be considered? I think our size is very small, and I don't think that would be a good thing. We may think in disposing of our solar plant into an electric company to strengthen the balance sheet and take it away. It's something that we could do. Sign a long-term PPA with the supplier, and something we will investigate. But IPOing is a very small amount. It's not worth that. Another question is, how are the evolving rates in Cerro Colorado and reason to worry? When you should expect to reach 60,000 tons thanks to San Dionisio? I think starting with the last one, 63,000 tons, we'll see them in 25. And reason to worry, well, we have had a couple of quarters with lowish grades, lower than normal, similar to the mine grades. But if you look at the PA that was prepared in 21, those numbers of lower copper grades were predicted, so they were expected to happen in 24, simply because the best grades of the Cerro Colorado are in the east, far east, and in the west, basically under the road, and they are slated to be in production in the last 5 years of the life of Cerro Colorado, which means we are going through lower grades. But this is planned. I mean, this is nothing that is. It's in the PA that's published in our web page. In relation, somebody asks me about artificial intelligence, if we have considered practical application of this new technology for Atalaya. Not as such, but we have lots of things that are doing this in a practical way, like optimizing the consumption of the mills, small things that have been, we are in the leading part of that, but not AI itself. I think this is something that has been done for a few years already. If an acquisition is made abroad in a more geographically challenging environment, automation and running the mining offsite may be a strategy. Is this something that Atalaya has looked into? Have you looked into truck automation, including in Spain? Yes, we have looked at truck automation. It's not so economic in Spain due to the low wages. I mean, our drivers are probably cost around 5 to 7 times less than in Australia, so the advantage of that is not that clear. Running from the distance, well, actually can be done, because it's not a problem at all. Right now, I or anyone could look in their telephone or computer how the plant is going. We can start it, we can stop it, we can do everything. Everything is done automatically from the control room, but with access to any of the computers that are authorized. So this, of course, it could be done. If you had to go in a challenging environment, the main question here is always maintenance. Maintenance and getting good people is the difficult part. Anything new at Toro that you can say in respect of timelines for permitting? Well, we expect to receive the approval of a project being considered strategic interest sometime in I would say April, maximum May, and that speeds up the permitting, and also almost is an endorsement of the government, of the regional government. Why is that? Is because before declaring it strategic, they have to go through a whole evaluation of the project from the environmental point of view, economical point of view, social, which means it's very unlikely that the departments of the government, regional government, that are reporting and making the reports for the president and the council, saying that this is strategic, will change their views just 2 months later. So I think that will be a huge endorsement, and we expect to see this change in, I would say, April, maybe May. You never know, because there's no timeline, but we believe it's going to be sooner rather than later. Considering that Elix was theoretical until Atalaya built the testing plant and then moved into production, how do you intend to protect your IP? Is there a way to build a JV company with Elix to monetize the technology further? Well, the IP is, we have the exclusivity in the Pirate Belt, and we have the rights of refusal if the technology is sold somewhere else. But the technology is not ours. We are financing Lain technology that has it. It's a single person company, which we are financing mostly with loans convertible into equity in this company. So we have a participation in the if this technology is monetized. But unfortunately, it's not ours. Although we have lots of rights attached to the success of this. Since we are not longer incorporated into Cyprus, and we have no takeover protection built into articles, What is a fair takeover value? How would you hope to protect against a hostile takeover? Well, fair takeover value, it depends on what the shareholders decide or approve. I think everybody understands that we are quite far from our fair takeover value, and the best way to be protected is to have strong shareholders. And we have Trafigura, we have Cobas, we have Muza, we have some that with 5 calls you will get over 50%. So it would have to be something that at least these 5 entities would consider it positive. So a hostile takeover will be very difficult to happen into our company. And if it happens, of course, we have a defense strategy, and we have some banks already in place for a defense. What is our current relationship with Sunfire and Matza? Is there a dialogue? Well, we have a dialogue from the technical point of view, and always try to see if we can optimize things, but it's nothing else that I may think. Eventually, I think we'll have to agree in areas that are common, where we have tailings, where there are deposits that are very close to each other, where maybe we can optimize. Our debt is very low, which makes us more attractive for any potential bidder. Do you plan to address this acquisition? Well, we are looking at things as usual, but it's better to have a very low debt or very a good balance sheet, because it will give us more protection if there's any difficult times. Another question is, it was mentioned that Toro permitting was progressing swiftly. What's the next key milestone for Toro? When do you expect to have the outcome of the permitting process? Well, as I said before, the next milestone is the consideration of the project to be a strategic project, and later the permitting will probably be the last part of the year, when they have gone through all the environmental evaluations. On CapEx, you have guided 24, but you would possibly provide a bit more color for 25. As a reference, consensus is 135 million euros. How do you feel about this number, and will you please talk that your expectations are? I think the reason why it's 135 million is everybody's expecting Toro, and I think it's reasonable. I think Toro will be around 250 million, so higher than before. And I think the expectation as consensus is that we will have about half of that CapEx to be incurred in 25, because it's when we expect to start constructing Toro. Toro, very likely, if we get the permits at the end of the year, on the last quarter, we will be constructing it in 1 year and 3 months. We have everything ready to move very fast, so most of the expenditure will happen in 25. Shareholder structure given Trafigura and exit from Matza. Do you have any view on their long-term position with Atalaya? Is there any dialogue with Trafigura? Well, Trafigura, we don't have any dialogue, especially. We have one person of Trafigura on the board, but we don't have anything special. We never know, but we suspect, looking at the history, that obviously there will be an exit at a certain time to monetize their investment. They have been here already, I would say, 7 years or 8 years or 9 years. So if you look at what happened in other cases, they have exited. But when they will do it, well, I'm sure they will do it in the time where they believe they have a good return. But we don't have any special dialogue with them about this. Next question is solar plant. Could you remind us what the difference it makes in terms of cash cost per pound? Look, it's around 22% of the electricity that will become, let's call it, for free. It will be in our balance sheet. So 22% of electricity, if the total cost was around, let's say, 30 million, 22 will be 6 million saving. 6 million saving is around 5, 6 cents per pound. If you consider rough numbers, and you divide by 100 million pounds payable. Alex, could you remind us the commissioning timelines? When might you consider permitting more capital to this project? Well, I have mentioned, commissioning in this next quarter, and then more capital to this project probably at the end of the year, next year, if we consider that it can be applied for Masa Valverde from other areas. We always used a contractor for mining. Why is everything outsourced? Any plan to bring it back in-house? It's possible to bring it back in-house, but we have made all kinds of numbers, and a contractor has a very low margin and has something that we don't have, which is the access to sell the machines later at a very good price, and that's the reason why in Spain most of it is outsourced. Simply, they are more economic than anything else. Treatment refining charges, spot TCs have fallen quite dramatically year on year. Are you able to quantify the tailwind that generates Atalaya that we should expect in 2024? Well, normally we are through benchmarks. So the benchmark of this first part is already matched and is going down, of course. But yeah, in the future it can be very interesting. Normally TCs RCs, I would say, represent around 20 cents per pound, 24. So if this are, let's say, half, you can consider it would be 10 cents per pound if it continues to be like that. I don't think it will continue so much, to be honest, simply because I suppose it must be some discipline in stopping some smelters. Otherwise everybody will lose money, because at this spot prices, the smelter does not make any money, and they better stop. Does the 25, another question, million tons waste stripping guidance for 24 includes on the inicio? No, that's the waste on Terra Colorado, which is roughly a 2-to-1, slightly less than 2-to-1 cost per ton. How would you should be thinking about margin uplift given Helix from 25 outwards? Very early to say. I cannot say how it's the margin going to improve. I think the main key point of Helix is to use it on polymetallic, which will increase the recoveries. And of course, by increasing the recoveries, you lower your costs and get more tons. Could the forthcoming announcement dividend be paid before the domiciliation? I think this has been answered because it's a bit complicated. At the moment, Atalaya is one horse ride. It's a one-horse ride. Is there any possibility of expanding into another copper country, like Spain, for example, Congo, or another country? Well, we are looking at other places, certainly not Congo, but yes, we are looking at other things. Congo, it's 7 years in experience in Congo. It's not an easy place for foreign companies, and that's why you only see there Glencore and Chinese companies with some Indian small companies. There's a reason for that. What could be expected all-in costs when the company gets to those 120,000 tons in 3 or 4 years, closer to 2.5? And what are the key movers up and down? Well, yes, absolutely. The drivers will be around closer to 2.5. But volume-wise, I mean, this is a set of different operations, a group of different operations, not a single operation of 120,000. So the effect in all-in cost is not that high. It's adding several companies, not a larger operating company. So the only thing that goes down is the G&As, which are divided down, and also the fact that the costs in total are going to be lower, and the costs at San Dionisio with the higher grades are going to be, if I remember well, are average around $2 per pound, so substantially lower than now. Next question is, could you consider alternative business non-copper that take advantage of Atalaya assets, land, clean energy, building warehouse structures, 24-hour operational, data centers? Well, no, not at this stage, because you need people, you need experience, and I think we have enough troubles in our hands, and we have lots of projects going on that we don't even report until they are already materialized. So we'll concentrate in what we know best. Well, we have gone through 1 hour. There's no more questions. There have been lots of questions, and we'll try to run as much as possible. We are out of time. I want to thank you for attending and being so active as usual. And if you have any question, please let us know through our webpage or any of our executives. Thanks very much.
That's great, Alberto, Cesar. Thank you very much indeed for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you will now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the board can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Atalaya Mining PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.